Think back for a second to when you were in high school. For a whole lot of us, making $100,000 a year, that was it. That was the absolute ultimate benchmark, the finish line. If you hit that magical six-figure salary, you had officially made it. You were rich. But today, we're looking at a pretty massive mystery that's incredibly frustrating for millions of people. Why does hitting that exact same milestone suddenly feel like you are just barely treading water?
Well, brace yourselves because here is the harsh reality. As of recently, close to 50% of people earning a six-figure salary are actually living paycheck to paycheck. No joke, half of them. This is a massively controversial topic right now, and it really forces us to ask, is 100 grand a year still a lot of money, or are people just getting way worse at managing their finances? Look, if you're feeling total financial anxiety despite earning a quote-unquote good salary, you aren't alone and you definitely aren't crazy. The fundamental math has completely changed.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are going to unpack exactly what happened to the American dream. We're diving deep into the economic math to figure out why the disappearing six-figure dream is a very harsh reality and why $100,000 just isn't what it used to be.
To solve this mystery, we've got 5 clear clues on our agenda today. The broken benchmark, the wage stagnation trap, the cost of living explosion, the geography penalty, and finally, the new magic number. Let's jump right in.
Okay, clue number 1, the wage stagnation trap. We need to figure out if wages are actually keeping up.
The simple logic is this, right? If wages are growing incredibly fast across the board, 100,000 wouldn't seem like much. But are they? Let's look at the U.S. Census data. In 1980, American families had a median income of $75,672, and that's when adjusted for today's currency. But look at what happened over 3 decades later. By the 2021 census, that number had actually dropped down to $70,784. So despite decades of massive, booming economic growth in this country, the median income for everyday families has literally shrunk.
And what's really wild here is the staggering contrast in who is actually getting the raises. For the lower and middle class, wages have only crept up about 5 to 6% since 1979. But meanwhile, those in the 95th percentile, the top 5% of all wage earners, they've seen their wages completely skyrocket by 41%. For the vast majority of us, wages have just been entirely stagnant.
So why exactly is this happening? Well, researchers at the Kellogg School of Business point to this phenomenon called labor market concentration. Let's break that down into plain English. Imagine you work at a factory making water bottles down in Memphis, Tennessee. You get fed up with your pay and decide, hey, I'm going to look for a better offer. But if there are no competitor factories in the Memphis area, you have nowhere to go. You can't defect. Because of that total lack of competition, your employer has all the leverage, and you're forced to just take whatever wage they offer. Researchers proved this wasn't just some academic theory by looking at over 300,000 manufacturing plants. When employers hold the leverage, they pay lower wages, period. Now, higher wage earners, typically in knowledge work, they often have the freedom to work remotely for anyone across the country, so they completely avoid this trap.
That brings us to clue number 2, the cost of living explosion. It's time to look at the budget busters.
So, if wages for most people have totally flatlined, earning $100,000 should still feel like a massive amount of money, right? To find out why it doesn't, we need to look at the big 5 budget busters. These are the major unavoidable costs in anyone's life: housing, healthcare, transportation, insurance, and education. Let's see just how much these have jumped.
The housing market brilliantly and painfully illustrates this problem. Based on data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, if you spent $100,000 on a home back in 1990, you would have to spend $377,000 today for that exact same equivalent home. While standard consumer prices have steadily gone up over the years, home prices have just completely outpaced them. From a housing perspective alone, your six-figure salary isn't buying anywhere near what it used to.
Then we have healthcare. This industry has grown to an almost unimaginable size. Back in 1960, we spent about 5% of our nation's GDP on healthcare. Today, it accounts for close to 20% of the nation's entire GDP, and it is hitting our wallets directly. Out-of-pocket healthcare costs have increased by roughly 27% since 1990, and yes, that is even after adjusting for inflation. It's just a massive, growing burden on everyday life.
Next up is transportation, which has honestly become a total wealth killer. $716. That is the average monthly car payment for a new car today. Even used cars are averaging over $520 a month right now.
But, it's not just the monthly payment that hurts. It's the trap.
people are financing these vehicles for longer and longer just to be able to afford that monthly payment. The average car loan term is now 69.44 months. That is dangerously close to 6 full years of being locked into paying off a depreciating asset.
And because 81% of consumers buying new cars have to rely on financing, it's fueling a massive national crisis. Auto loan debt in the United States has hit historic all-time highs, sitting at a staggering $1.55 trillion. This absolutely compounds that financial squeeze everyday families are feeling right now.
Oh, and of course, once you actually buy that expensive car, you have to insure it. Between 1990 and 2020, general inflation was about 2.36% per year. But car insurance inflation, that averaged 3.8% per year. To put that into perspective, an auto policy that cost $500 in 1990 costs nearly $1,600 in 2021 for the exact same vehicle and coverage. And it is not just cars. Homeowners insurance premiums more than doubled from 2001 to 2019 alone.
Finally, let's talk about education. Over the last 30 years, average tuition has more than doubled. Take this super relatable example straight from our source material, a student who attended the University of Washington years ago. Now, they actually ended up dropping out because they played a bit too much World of Warcraft back in the day, but that's besides the point. Back then, tuition, room, and board cost $26,000 a year. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $40,000 in today's money. But if you go to their website today, out-of-state tuition is $64,000 a year. The costs have absolutely exploded far beyond standard inflation. So when you combine the housing, the healthcare, the cars, the insurance, and education, everyday living is just dramatically more expensive. This quote right here perfectly summarizes the devastation of our purchasing power. $100,000 spent on goods and services in 1990 would require over $231,000 to get the exact same amount of goods today.
Moving on to clue number 3, the geography penalty, because where you live absolutely matters.
To really get the full picture, we have to realize that $100,000 isn't a fixed universal value across the country. Remember Memphis, Tennessee from our factory example earlier? According to smart asset calculations, Memphis is one of the lowest cost of living places in the US. $100,000 goes very, very far there. The average rent for a one-bedroom in Memphis is $1,069. But if you take that exact same $100,000 salary and move to San Francisco, you are hit with an average one-bedroom rent of $3,000 a month. That is a nearly $2,000 difference just in basic housing alone.
And the reality for people living on the coasts is just brutal. In San Francisco, that $3,000 rent consumes nearly 50% of your take-home pay on a $100,000 salary. It leaves you with almost zero discretionary income. Reddit is full of users sharing these exact harsh realities. One user in New Jersey noted they pay $30K for daycare and $20K for healthcare alone. Another user brilliantly replied, $30K for daycare is nuts? I hope your kids are learning piano at that age. I mean, it's funny, but it highlights a really painful truth. Another user in LA noted that $100K is livable, sure, but you certainly aren't rich anymore. To feel comfortable in these high-cost areas, you often need closer to $150,000 to $200,000 now.
Which brings us to our final clue, number 4, the new magic number. So, what is the real goal now? If the original benchmark is totally broken due to stagnant wages, soaring costs, and the geography penalty, what is the new goalpost? $129,000. According to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, you would have to make $129,000 today just to have the exact same purchasing power that a $100,000 salary got you just 1 decade ago. Really think about that for a second. We aren't talking about back in 1990 anymore. That is just 10 years ago. Growing up, the dream was always that clean, simple $100,000 mark. Saying to yourself, I want to make $129,000 just doesn't have the same poetic ring to it, does it? But unless you live in a super low cost of living area, that is the new reality. We have to adjust our expectations to the actual math of today's economy. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this to consider. Based on the true cost of housing, healthcare, and exactly where you live right now, what does your actual financial magic number need to be to finally feel like you've made it?